The Commonwealth has charged Karen Reed with second-degree homicide for hitting her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, with her car. They've also charged that she did that while under the influence and that she left the scene. The defense is arguing that Karen Reed was framed, that this was all a cover-up, and that she did not hit John O'Keefe with her car. Something else happened to him that evening. Very interesting morning in court on day 9 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. As we finished up the cross-examination of Julie Albert, there was then a very long morning break. And after the very long morning break, we came back to court. The defense attorneys and defendant were not in the courtroom. It was the prosecution and an attorney for one of the individuals in the press gallery, Aiden Kearney, and they were arguing over whether or not that individual would be excused from court during the testimony of certain witnesses. The state made that motion, it seems, 2 days ago and served it on the Associated Press. The state Commonwealth said that that is what the rules say that they are to do, is to serve it on the Associated Press. The defense attorney argued that he is the attorney for that individual. He was not given fair notice that the state was seeking to exclude a member that has a press pass from the gallery during certain witness testimony. We do not have the filings from the state. The defense argued that they only got that less than a half an hour before they were heard before the court, and that they just happened to be at the courthouse that day because of other matters, which is probably a beneficial coincidence for that defense attorney, because imagine how pissed. He was already pissed, but imagine how much more pissed had he not been on site. The state was asking to exclude Kearney from the testimony of Julie Nagel, Christopher Albert, Colin Albert, Michael Proctor, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, Brian Albert Jr., Trooper Buchnick, and Nicole Albert. The judge granted that motion, did not say that they couldn't watch the feeds, did not say they couldn't cover it, but said that they could not be present in the courtroom during the testimony of those witnesses. Nicole Albert then took the stand. She is the wife of Brian Albert. They were the homeowners at the time of 34 Fairview. She is also the sister of Jen McCabe, who is, as we know, very involved in all of this, though we haven't heard from her yet. During direct examination, what we learned was about the time that Nicole Albert left the waterfall, went home to 34 Fairview, who she was with, who was at 34 Fairview when she got there, and the order people left 34 Fairview early that morning. She said her daughter, Caitlin Albert, left around 2 a.m., was the last one to leave. And then after that, she went upstairs and went to bed with her husband, Brian Albert, who was still awake, but was upstairs. She said she had been downstairs kind of cleaning up and wrapping up as everyone was leaving, and Brian Albert took himself up to bed. I've got questions about that, but isn't it the way sometimes? Then we get into cross-examination, and cross-examination got real feisty with regard to the dog Chloe. The dog Chloe escaping the fencing in the backyard and biting someone and injuring them and them being transported to the hospital. The witness clarified that that event was 2 dogs fighting, and then the person who got injured was trying to break up that fight between the dogs after Chloe had escaped the backyard. She testified that Chloe had been rehomed and was very, very annoyed by that line of questioning. Testified that Chloe had been rehomed to Vermont and that Chloe was available. They knew where Chloe was, or know where Chloe is, if anyone has questions about that, and it went back and forth. We then got into phone calls in the morning from Jennifer McCabe. This witness, Nicole Albert, testified that she was awoken by her sister, flying into her room, throwing open the doors of the bedroom and waking her up that morning. The defense is connecting the timing of that to the dash cam videos showing when Jen McCabe left and went towards 34 Fairview. They asked a lot about that on cross-examination over a week ago with the officers whose dash cam they covered. Do you see when Jen McCabe is apparently leaving the screen and heading towards the house and the timestamps on that? So they are trying to nail down the time of when Jen McCabe went in to wake up her sister, Nicole Albert. However, as we were just getting to the end of cross-examination, there are two phone calls early in the morning, 6:07 and 6:08 a.m. from Jen McCabe to Nicole Albert. Nicole has been vehement that she never answered a call from her sister that morning. She never spoke to her sister before her sister came flying into the bedroom. The defense is saying that the cell phone records show that those calls were answered and that there was a 9-second and a 6 or 7-second call there. It has not been clarified whether those could be voicemails or not. We are just getting into that level of cross-examination, but the witness has said, I did not answer a call from my sister. I did not speak to my sister before she came into the bedroom. We will see what happens in all of that when we return from lunch with more cross-examination of Nicole Albert. At the end of trial day 9, we've completed the direct examination of Brian Albert. We have not yet started the cross-examination of Brian Albert. That will start on Monday. The court also at the very end of the day today looked generally at the lawyers and said, you know, if we could start to move it along, maybe not be so repetitive. I think maybe the court needs to address that more directly with the lawyers, either at sidebar, but saying it broadly in front of the jury, I think puts a little more pressure on the prosecution to zoom. We have had some very, very repetitive testimony, and that is what the court is referring to. We don't need 4 witnesses to identify where the driveway is on a house. They've done a jury view. The driveway just is where the fuck it is. Asking another witness another time where the driveway is doesn't change the fact. There are some very large facts in dispute in this case. The location of a driveway is not what's in dispute here. But we're not at all of it yet. At the very end of the day, the defense also noted that they anticipate getting to Caitlin Albert's testimony on Monday. Remember, Caitlin Albert is the daughter of Brian and Nicole Albert, who we've heard from today. She was at the waterfall with everybody and then went back to the Albert house. And she is friends, somebody that I used to know, acquaintances, close friends with paramedic Katie McLaughlin. Why does it matter? Katie McLaughlin, in her testimony, seemed to distance herself substantially from how well she knew Caitlin Albert, if she does, saying, I went to high school with someone named Caitlin Albert. And then it started to come out that they spent time together. Katie McLaughlin kept saying those photos look old, but yes, I see we're in a photo together. I don't remember that photo. And then after court, the interneted, and the defense got a deluge of other photos of Caitlin Albert together with Katie McLaughlin, some that were much more recent. The defense brought that to the court's attention, and the defense is going to want to bring that up with Caitlin Albert. Why does it matter? It seems the testimony of Katie McLaughlin saying, I hit him from the defendant is where everyone else heard that from. It seems that Katie McLaughlin is the one that heard that statement and relayed it to others generally. And so the interconnectedness between Caitlin Albert and Katie McLaughlin comes more relevant to the jury determining the veracity of Katie McLaughlin's testimony, which if she is the main witness that heard that statement from the defense, and if that statement of the defendant is something that the prosecution is going to be leaning heavily into, then knowing the interconnectedness between those parties becomes very relevant for the jury to determine veracity. The jury can say, doesn't matter to us, she heard what she heard. Or the jury can say, that's suspicious. It's up for the jury to decide. The defense wants them to get to consider the photos. We'll see what the prosecution does with that. But it was a slow tread through direct testimony today. We saw more pictures of the house. We did see on cross-examination a photorealistic reconstruction or visual exhibit of the front of the house from the street, giving a layout of the Alberts' house that is not from an angle up the street or down the street in any certain way. And that I found to be very helpful. Yes, the jury has had a jury view, but the photos being introduced by the prosecution are either from an angle going the street this way or an angle going this way, or zoomed close up on the house where you can't see where the victim was located. The prosecution did start eliciting that the area where the victim was located is dark, very dark, no street lights, lots of trees, and it is a darker area of the yard. I think that is going to be used to argue that the reason people didn't see the victim as they were coming out of the house is the distance from the side door down the driveway to where the cars were vis-a-vis where the victim was on the far side of the yard. We will see what more gets made of that. I suspect, by the way the prosecution's been going, that once we are done with all of these witnesses, I think we're going to go through all of the civilian witnesses at once and then get into the expert witnesses. Any cell phone witnesses, search witnesses, the coroner/pathologist, the DUI retrograde extrapolation. I think we're going to get to all of that, or the blood alcohol. I think we're going to get to all of that at the end. So I imagine the beginning of next week and maybe the bulk of next week will be the rest of the individuals. I wonder if they will leave kind of Jen McCabe for the end of all of those individuals. But it seems that we're going to go through the people that were at the Alberts house in the waterfall. And then I imagine that we will get into Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts' testimony and go from there. So the questions remain. Will anyone say wicked in this court? So far, it hasn't happened. Will Trooper Proctor be called by the prosecution? We don't know yet. And when, if ever, will we get into the defense case in chief? Not sure yet. But without the expert witnesses going first, it's hard to give a ton of context because we still don't quite know how the prosecution believes Karen Read hit the defendant with her car. We're just not there yet. But 2 weeks in, it's hard to go through all of the witness testimony, trying to piece together the timeline. It is getting a little bit better with when people left the waterfall and when they got back to the home at 34 Fairview, about a 5-minute drive. So I feel that we are starting to get to some of the timeline, but there's still so much that is unknown. What do you remember from this case? And if you weren't chatting about it with others and engaging in that conversation with me, how much of it would you still remember at this point, 2 weeks in? Because the jurors, when they go home, can't talk about this case. When they talk to other jurors at lunch, they can't talk about the evidence. How much harder would that be to remember what has come in this case without having any way to process it except for taking notes and sitting and listening, because some of it is so very repetitive. Law Nerds, we'll see you soon. Bye. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.